Welcome to ARCHIDEX Fast Forward webinar series. Okay, Assalamualaikum, good afternoon, salam sejahtera and merdeka. So my name is Norina Nawawi and I will be your moderator for today. So for those who's new to this program, so what is ARCHIDEX Fast Forward? ARCHIDEX Fast Forward is a webinar series focused on holistic perspective from industry. Each section brings together collaboration from industry with renowned architecture and building professionals sharing their experiences from various perspectives. So, of course, in addressing current key issues and topics. So, today's program, Architects collaborate with ICOMOS Malaysia into another dimension, architecture and built environment. So, again, what is ICOMOS? So, ICOMOS stands for International Council on Monuments and Site. ICOMOS Malaysia is part of ICOMOS International Network of multidisciplinary professionals involved in conservation of tangible and intangible heritage. It is an independent organization which acts as a national and international link between public authorities, institutions, and individuals involved in the study and conservation of all places of cultural heritage significance. ICOMOS Wish is also is a channel for local individuals, especially if they want to take part in international activities. Of course, it deals with conservation, restoration, rehabilitation, enhancement of monuments, of groups of buildings. We have many professionals in ICOMOS Malaysia across the country. So if you're interested in heritage and you have expert knowledge to share, do join us at icomos.malaysia.org. Okay. Now, let's get back to today's exciting program of themes Siren of the Old and Sustenance of the Present. I'm sure you agree that memories of places and spaces and time have a deep impression on humankind. Then or present, heritage is timeless. For any legacy to be significant, its existence must be told and retold in a continuum culturally appropriate and maintain relevance. It is a human natural continuity and curiosity that draws and drives this urge to discover what is already known and unknown. You can see that humans strive to witness the intriguing ghostly past of the place and space physically as they learn and relearn to seek its meaning. So, as part of history, architecture in its reign or splendor, as modernist or of traditional heritage, plays a vital role in bringing memories of joy or pain that has been the siren to travelers, visitors, tourists, historians, academics, and others who quench for its soulful narrative in this lasting impression. Thus, sustaining legacies present a current time should be in present time should be integral in our culture as far as pass our windows to lessons of the future. So to elaborate all this narrative, we have today with us two prominent advocates of heritage and built environment. So speaker one is architect Ahmad Najib, or formerly called Nash Arifin, and he will talk more on the siren of the past. We will tell the topic later on. And we also have the second speaker, architect Mustafa Zakarnain, to talk about the sustenance of the present. All right. So the session will be having the two speakers first, and then only we will have the Q&A later. So please write the questions in the chat box while we go through the two speakers. So without much ado, I would like to read Architect Najib's biography. So, architect Najib Arifin, or architect Naj Arifin, is a graduate from Rosler, New York, with double degrees in architecture and building sciences, with minors in history and anthropology. So, thus, it gives he has a good combination of insights into architectural field from the different angles. Although working for 7 years in architectural firm, architect Nash left design practice just after he acquired his professional factory exam, and now he's doing research and consultancy in the built environment and tourism development with his non-profit body, which is Nusantara Academy of Development, Geocultures, and Ethno-Linguistics. Well, talk about linguistics. Nash speaks 7 languages and has traveled the world, including Naples, Tokyo, Xi'an, call wherever it is, and he has been conferred a Union of International Architecture Heritage Conservation Award. So let's welcome Architect Nash on the screen.
Hello,
Yeah.
Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera.
All right, Assalamualaikum Nash. Good to see you again. And
Salam.
even though you're
Good
on
to
the
see you
screen,
too.
yeah, it's
Thank
good
you.
afternoon
Salam
today.
Merdeka.
All right. So, knowing you and the way you crafted heritage to create this interest this afternoon, topic when architecture
Mhm,
heritage inspired design make you go betulkah? So, provide
mhm.
many case to many questions unanswered questions. Let's hear Naj. The screen is yours for 20 minutes, Naj. All right.
Okay, thank you very much, Datin Dr. Norwina. Right, now I trust you can see my screen and the topic, when architectural heritage inspired designs make you go betul ke? Okay, now there are a few facets to this question or to this title, and one of the first very quick one is looking at this very first slide of mine. Okay, now um, I think you might agree with me that the whole design doesn't really look very, how shall we say, very harmonious, correct? Okay, even I don't think it's harmonious, and I did it, okay, to make a point. Now, this is the Merdeka month, and I wanted to have a Merdeka inspired design. And so I used the colors of our Malaysian flag, Jalur Gemilang, with blue, yellow, and you can see the bands of red. But even I can see that it doesn't quite look harmonious. It looks a bit too funny, okay? Unlike the real flag, which is very harmonious, okay? So this is a little point here in which sometimes you have all the heritage factors or the features or the details. Well, maybe not the details, that's where I'm going to come in. But you have all the basic heritage factors right, but the end result is not quite right. Okay, so this is where we go into this issue. But first, let me just give you a quick background of myself. Datin Dr. Norwina has already mentioned about my background, in which I have double degrees in architecture and building sciences, as well as minors in history and anthropology. And so I like to think that I have a good view of architecture from many other perspectives, including, of course, history and anthropology. And this is one of the ways that I help to put them together and mix them into something that is cohesive. So this is one of my lectures that I give fairly regularly, especially upon request, and the title is 5 Malaysian Stories Over 15,000 Years. So you can look at the map there, which on immediate glance you can see that it is Southeast Asia, but yet it's not quite the Southeast Asia that we know today. Okay, I'm going to come to that a little bit later. But the 5 stories include the continent of Mu, which is what this really ancient continent was about 15,000 years ago. That's the ancient name of it. And the modern name is Sundaland. Okay, but that's a modern name given by modern geologists. And also the prehistoric presence of the Perak Man, for example, and in Lenggong, which is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then we have the Kingdom of Kedah in the 8th century BC. That's the oldest architectural remains in not just Malaysia, but also Southeast Asia. Okay, from the 8th century BC, that's way back during the Greek times, Roman, even older than Roman times, the Roman Empire. So we have a very ancient history. And then the Malacca Empire, and of course, until today. So this, what I want to mention is that our history is very complex. Our history is so interrelated. It comes with a whole set of things from geology to until anthropology and archaeology and so on and so forth, which, without realizing it, it does affect what we have today, which is why we need to know history. And I'll come to that, of course, in my presentation. So to continue, that complexity that I was talking about, the cross relationships, result in even, of course, confusion regarding our local and regional and even international architectural heritage, sometimes without even realizing it, how much that confusion is. And it stems from, I've given a little bit of it earlier, but just to list it out in a more cohesive manner, we have one of the most complex histories on earth, our region. Okay, not just Malaysia, of course. We can't separate Malaysia from the rest of Southeast Asia and even from Asia, spanning from the Great Ice Age, which was the time that Malaysia was part of a larger subcontinent or even continent, a sunken continent that was shown in the earlier poster that I showed. And then with that, we have that constant movement of people within and without Southeast Asia over thousands of years. Okay, now that means that we have had not just movements of the natives of Southeast Asia that make up the Malay peoples and all the other related peoples in Southeast Asia today, but also over the years, over the last few centuries, especially with people from other parts of the world, and number three, the influx and influences of successive religions in that time. Okay, as we know, besides the native animistic beliefs that we had in our region, we've had the influence of Hinduism, Buddhism, and of course, a large part of that being Islam, especially in insular Southeast Asia, and Christianity as well as a few other religions. So all these make up a part of or parts of that complexity that we have, especially in now we are coming closer and closer into Malaysia. And one of the most arrhythmic influences, meaning those that cause arrhythmia, which although it's used medically, but we can use it here architecturally as well as historically, with the arrival of successive colonial interventions in Malaya, in Southeast Asia, and so on, causing near complete disequanimity. Okay, and that again affects our architecture. In fact, as I was mentioning, that was one of the things that most affected our architecture. And finally, the breakneck changes in modernism and rapid changes in technology. So all these contribute to the complexity that we have. And if you had read, I believe you have read my blurb, the description of my talk before this on heritage-inspired designs, one of the questions that I did bring up was Minangkabau, Negeri, and its complexity. Okay, we are familiar, well, at least I think many of us are familiar with pictures. If not, some of us have already been to, for example, Sumatra Barat, where you can see this kind of course, beautiful ancient palace of the Minangkabau people in West Sumatra. Okay, and as part of our history, we have that close relationship with Sumatra Barat, West Sumatra province in what is today Indonesia, of course, with our Negeri Sembilan people. Now, even though that on the surface that sounds very simple, but actually there's a very complex history behind it, which, to cut a long story short, let me very quickly mention, actually it is not quite accurate to just simply pluck the Minangkabau type of very high upswept curved roofs of Sumatra Barat and plonk it into the Malaysian Negeri Sembilan context. Actually, it's not correct. Why? Because we have our own history from that. Okay, the Minangkabau people, yes, in the 12th, 13th, 14th centuries, they started arriving from Sumatra Barat, and at the height of the Malacca Empire, where it was a magnet, a lot of them came, and there was a reasoning behind that, which is too long to go into here, but there was a reason why they came in large numbers, and they started settling in the areas behind Malacca or beyond Malacca. Okay, and so that makes sense in what is today Negeri Sembilan. Okay, but an important part of that complexity is that they were not just immigrants like that, but when they came, they intermarried. They intermarried with the local Malays. They intermarried with the local Orang Asli, the Jakun, resulting in one of the special groups called the Jakun Biduanda. And this Jakun Biduanda group is the one that holds much of the traditional power in Negeri Sembilan social structure, which make up especially the Undang Luar, the 4 Undang Luar of Negeri Sembilan. So it's more complex than just saying, oh, the Minangkabau came to Negeri Sembilan and they are there till today. It's not as easy as that. And that results in architectural influences as well. As an indirect influence over the centuries, the that Minang architecture has made itself part of a suitable identity within Negeri Sembilan, and it results in a much more humble, a much more subtle, a much more modest rise in the upswept curve of the roof that you can see in the two houses in the upper picture here, which happened to have my two daughters. So when I brought them to visit the place, it's important to let our children know all these things, and so you can see that the upswept roof compared to the one in West Sumatra is much lower. Okay, and this is our Negeri Sembilan identity. This is not found in West Sumatra. You bring this to West Sumatra, they don't understand. They say, why is it like this? It's not from here, okay? Because it is from Negeri Sembilan. It has become part of Negeri Sembilan architectural heritage, something that we can be proud of. We don't have to just plonk in from West Sumatra and bring it here. Now, on the other hand, there are some nuances, okay? In the gateway to Sri Menanti in Malaysia, in Negeri Sembilan, yes, you do have the higher upswept roof style of West Sumatra for a reason. There was a reason for that, because the Yam Tuan Besar of Negeri Sembilan was invited, the ancestor of course, Raja Malewa, back in the 18th century, early part of the 18th century, was invited to come and establish the dynasty that now is the Yam Tuan of the royal family of the Yam Tuan of Negeri Sembilan. So with that usage, okay, it has a certain understanding, a certain meaning to it. But for the normal Negeri Sembilan, then we have our own identity as shown in the picture. Okay. And this is also indicated in the homegrown palace, okay, the homegrown palace of Sri Menanti, which you see here, in which this is it holds the record as the tallest timber palace built without nails. Okay, this holds the record as the world's tallest timber palace built without nails. And there may be other palaces, timber palaces in other parts of the world, China, Japan, for example, where it might be even taller, but they are not entirely in timber and they're not all built without nails. They do have a mix. Okay, this has already been checked by historians, architectural historians. So this holds the record as the world's tallest timber palace built without nails. Now, when the British wanted to build this to replace an older palace, which was destroyed during the war with the British, okay, it was already during the British period, and they did it according to the British normal standards. They had a tender. It was won by a local contractor, Malay and Chinese at the time. But they also had two local Malay craftsmen to come in and supervise the whole construction so that it will be an authentic traditional Malay palace. And our two craftsmen, Tukang Kaha and Tukang Tai, correctly identified that the British original design, which used the Minangkabau roof from West Sumatra with the high upswept roofs, was incorrect for our use here. Okay, it was to be the local style, which, as you can see, uses the very modest rise on my cursor here, showing how it does have a rise, but it is a modest one, appropriate to the Negeri Sembilan usage. Okay, so this is where this was part of that legacy, where we don't have to just import or use whatever style, and this I will reflect in our mosque usage as well. Now, when we go to the vernacular architecture, let me very quickly point out that we want to use traditional styles not just because of style, not just because of how shall I say, blind identity, but because these architectural features, these vernacular features, traditional features, have had a usage that was most appropriate and suitable to our climate, to our materials, and to our way of life. Okay, we have the traditional, pretty much all traditional Malaysian architecture, whether it's the normal Malay or it's in our East Malaysian context, the Iban Kadazan or Rungus Bidayuh longhouses. They were all raised on stilts. Okay, and that was part of a very intelligent lifestyle which took into account our climate, our geology, our floods, the wild animals that we have. So that all those are still actually very, very suitable until today. Okay, we can still use those. And the very large roofs, and then also the fact that the roofs, our traditional roofs, have a double slant. Okay, there's the triangular top part, and then there's the lower side parts. That almost all our traditional architecture in Malaysia has that kind of double slant. Okay, so I've used two examples here, which I consider are pretty good. Okay, they're pretty good examples. I'm not. Sometimes people just give bad examples. I'm giving you some pretty good examples. And the one on the right here is the design of a tradition of a house based on our Malay architectural tradition, where it's raised on stilts, and in fact, the car here can even be parked under the kolong, we call it, which is the part under the house, the main house, the rumah ibu, and it becomes a natural a car porch for the house. So it's not wasted space. You always need spaces for your cars, your kids' cars as well. The husband, the wife, the kids. So there's ample space underneath the house for that. So it's not wasted space, as some people claim. They don't want that because it's supposed to be a waste of space. Okay. And you have the double roof, which and wide overhangs to cater for the intense sunshine and intense rainfall that we have. Now, look at the one on the left below. Now, this it doesn't quite look like the one that I mentioned, where you have the double roof, okay, the double sloped roof. But let's look at history, okay. Now, for Johor, this is a Bugis Malay modern house built by the family of Bugis Malay. And of course, the Bugis Malay, they came a few centuries ago. In fact, they were already here during the Malaccan period. They were very big traders in Malacca, the port of Malacca. And then with the fall of the Portuguese, they went to other ports. But they came back to Johor, and a lot of Bugis Malay Johor, my great-grandmother is one of them. And so they built, well, what I'm saying is, one of these families wanted to build, and they built a traditional style house with modern materials in the style of the Bugis traditional house. Now, the Bugis traditional house from the Bugis homeland of southern Sumatra does not normally use that double sloped roof. So for the Bugis subtype, this is correct. Okay, and now looking at another detail in the background of the picture of the traditional house here, which actually is part of the Istana Dalam Kota in Kuala Terengganu, which was a complex of about 58 traditional Terengganu structures, which were even bigger than the one that you see here, which was one of the last survivors of the great fires that happened. There were two fires that finally destroyed Istana Dalam Kota in Kuala Terengganu, and this is one of those that was saved. So don't say that, oh, why this is a palace and it's so small. Well, this is one of 58 structures, each of the others bigger than this. Okay, but looking at the Museum Negara in the background, where it was very, very well designed by architect Ho Kok Ho, he was well advised about the details, in which we look at the upper part, the end of the gable end there, you have the finials, which in Malay is called the kayu silang. Okay, the kayu silang, I hope you can see my hands here. And this is normally used for royal or governmental buildings in the Malay Peninsula. Okay, this was reserved for royal or governmental buildings. Okay, and on top of that, to make it even more royal, you have now in this picture, which my cursor is moving around on the right-hand side, you can just about see the kayu silang here. And from profile on the side, I know it's a bit small, but I think you can see, and even if you don't quite see it here, you can remember if you have been to Museum Negara. Where from the side you can see that it has a paruh in front, a beak in front. Okay, and that is even more special, used only for really royal buildings. A good example is the Balai Besar in Alostar, Kedah, which was originally built in the 17th century, destroyed by Siamese invasions twice, and rebuilt until the version that you have today, which still has the kayu silang, specially known as silang burung, because of that beak, paruh burung in front of it, which indicates royalty. Okay, now you might ask, how come this rumah Bugis, rumah Bugis, which I show on the left, has that when it's supposed to be royal? Okay, now again, you need to look at the details because it's so complex. Okay, now outside of the Malay Peninsula, it is not reserved for royalty. In Sumatra, in Kalimantan, Sabah, in Sulawesi, anybody can use it. Okay, so here, because this is the house of a Bugis family, okay, in Johor, they are used to using it, and it doesn't have the beak in front, doesn't have the paro, so it's not really infringing into royalty. And of course, nobody would say that you can't wear yellow today, whereas a century ago you can't wear yellow. You can't use gading gajah or elephant's tusks because it was all meant for royalty. Okay, so it's changed. Okay, and finally, just a very quick one on the picture at the lower right-hand corner here, which is the house of Wansu in Terengganu, very well preserved. Kudos to the architect who did that. You know who you are. A feature here is something that you do see quite often in traditional Malay houses, and that is the little, again, you could call it a finial, but it's also like oh goodness, this morning I was just talking about it and now I forgot. But anyway, it is a single finial on the top, and many people mistakenly call it the tunjuk langit. Actually, it is not a tunjuk langit. What is a tunjuk langit? Tunjuk langit is the vertical strut in the roof frame, okay, inside the roof. Okay, there is a vertical strut inside which shows up, which points up to the sky when you're inside it, and that inside the house, and that is the tunjuk langit. Okay, this is called buah butung. Buah butung is many people have forgotten. Again, people forget, but there's a lot of history and heritage involved in this. Butung is the traditional old Malay word for intellect. So buah butung is the fruit of the intellect. And this little structure, this very humble, modest little finial, is placed on the rooftop of only very select houses of the penghulu, ketua kampung, or sidang, or anyone who is an authority, or someone that the villagers feel has the authority to put it. And it again goes back to the lifestyle, because in the olden days, when people visit a kampung, okay, outsiders visit a kampung, it is a custom, it is a courtesy to go and see the ketua kampung, or at least the family of the ketua kampung, tell them who you are, tell them your intention, and then you will be officially welcomed. And the word will spread that you are here in the kampung and what you're going to do. So imagine if you go into a kampung, okay, and it so happens that you don't see anyone. People are busy in the bendang, sawah bendang, or out in the jungle looking for products, and in their kebun dusun, whatever it is. Okay, so you don't see anyone. You go and look for the house with that buah butung. Okay, buah butung on the roof, and then you knock on the door, give your salam, and tell them who you are. Okay, so it was part of the lifestyle. It made sense. But of course, today, anyone can put it on their house, but it's good to know that that was the use of it. Okay, now we go on to the colonial, in which we all know Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad, but not many of us realize that actually the Malay states were not really outright colonies of the British Empire. Okay, we were part of the British Empire, but not outright colonies. We were protectorates. Why? Because the British did not conquer us outright like the Dutch did in Indonesia, like the French did in Indochina, like the Spanish did in the Philippines. The British ruled or administered us, in more polite terms, through treaties one by one with the sultans. Okay, with our sultans, which is why we have our sultans until today. Okay, they were not deposed. The British came in, and to many historians, this is a sign of intelligence. Our sultans had already seen that one by one in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in other places, they were being overthrown. So rather than have all the bloodshed and conquest and conflict, better to have a proper agreement in a gentleman's way, and then we get all the benefits that the British will bring to us. Okay, very intelligent. So the British, in recognizing that, if you look at how the colonials built in other places, okay, in the Dutch, when they built their buildings in Indonesia, the Spanish built their colonial buildings in the Philippines, the French in Indochina, they all built in all their own colonial European architecture. But here, the British, not just this building, but most of the buildings around the what is now Dataran Merdeka, the KL Old Railway Station, and all that, were not built in a European colonial style. Okay, they were built in an Islamic style. Okay, as you can see here. But Islamic styles have many types. Which type? Much of the literature until recently used Moorish. Okay, now that's not entirely 100% wrong, but that's not accurate either. Okay, actually it is Mughal. Okay, but still you can. There are some Moorish elements. There are, and it's also called Indo-Saracenic, whatever. But the main inspiration came from the Mughal Islamic Empire of northern India, which the British were familiar with. Okay, and so they used the Mughal style. Now, what are the features of the Mughal style? One is the onion-shaped dome. That is a very Mughal thing. The other is the Chatri finials. Okay, the Chatri finials or little spires. That's the word I was looking for that tunjuk langit versus buah butung thing. The spires. Okay, these little spires. Now, this is so Mughal. Okay, you don't find that in Moorish. And what is Moorish? Moorish is the style of architecture that you find in Moro Islamico, or the Moorish Spanish Muslims. That is Moorish. Okay, and in Spanish Muslim architecture, as you know, much of the Iberian Peninsula, especially Andalusia, was ruled by Muslims until 1492 AD. And so they had their own architectural Islamic style, which does not have onion-shaped domes, does not have these chatri finials or spires. Okay, so this alone already indicates it is very much Mughal inspired. And of course, there are some commonalities with the arches and so on, which you find both in Moorish Islamic Spain and Mughal Islamic India. Okay. Now, when we go through to the vernacular, I need to look at my timing here. Okay, I'll give myself just 5 minutes. When you look at the vernacular, okay, we have this kind of traditional mosque style, which is known as bumbung meru or bumbung tumpang. Okay, so that there are two synonymous names for it, bumbung meru, bumbung tumpang. But we have been so uh, um, influenced by other Islamic styles, especially that Mughal thing that I was just talking about. Until today, even many Malaysian Muslims think that if you have a mosque, you must have it in this style. And lo and behold, we have lost that very beautiful and climate-friendly traditional Malay Nusantara roof style, which was common throughout Southeast Asia. It was born in Southeast Asia. I can tell you that it's not from Nepal, it's not from China. It was born right here in Southeast Asia, and very suitable for our climate with all the ventilation requirements and so on and so forth. And instead, we are so mesmerized by the Mughal style for our mosques until we have lost that traditional style. Okay, I'm nearing the end. So this is the impression that we have now, that all our mosques must look like this. Okay, this is what we think of as our heritage, whereas this is not. This is alien to us. Yes, it is Islamic, but it is not. The architecture is alien to us. And we have the problem, when we have these domes, we have the problem of the soot and the maintenance that comes with it, which we won't have if we had continued to use our traditional Malay Nusantara roof forms of the pyramidal style, together with the wonderful natural ventilation that we would have gotten for all our mosques. So there you have it. Terima masjid kasih, okay, because I was talking about mosques. And yes, I'll be happy to answer questions after this. So back to you, our very able moderator, Datin Dr. Norwina. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Najib, for this soulful journey of the past, and it's quite an inspiration for those young people who want to do new design, to think about history and understand the relevance of those. All right, so perhaps you can share whatever that needs to talk about this later. Okay, now I have to read on the architect Mustafa's biography. All right.
Thank
you. Okay, yeah, thank you. So Architect Mustafa Zulkarnain is, or Architect Mus we call him, or Pak Mus, as most fondly call him, is an Auckland University alumni from New Zealand, and he has been practicing architecture for the past 27 years. He is also a fellow of the Malaysian Institute of Architects, a familiar face in PAM, and have served 6 terms in PAM Council, and is still currently in the committee members especially in housing, urban well-being of PAM. So he is also both chair and co-chair in a different time period. His expertise is in urban resilience, and he has actually mooted the idea of residency in ARCHIDEX, which is the committee that he has chaired before, and had prepared report for the government of Malaysia for the Kuala flood in 1914, called Strategic Initiative in Flood Disaster Preparedness and Mitigation for Malaysia, and he also has done PAM Strategic Plan 2030. As a rotating, he's also very active in delivering many papers in many conferences. And he's also having a convener to many kind of conference also and in discussion. And he's also a committee member of the Low Carbon Society Blueprint of KL. As an architect, his passion is towards value-sensitive residential development, and he has been awarded Innovative Township Award for Dinai Alam in Shah Alam. But that's not all. He has also have done hospitals and universities as an architect. And so let's, without much ado, can we welcome Architect Mustafa on the screen? Yeah.
Apa khabar? Salam
Okay.
Merdeka.
Assalamualaikum. Yeah. Yeah.
Salam, ya.
So good to see you after being in other parts of the world virtually. And this
Yeah.
morning you have also with
Miss
Indonesia.
traveling. Miss
Right.
traveling.
Yeah, just thinking that your CV is full of cities and residency. So how do you get to deal with heritage? Anyway, let's get this glossy going and listen to Architect Mustafa on his modernist and yet meaningful embodiment of nation's ivory tower, Panggung Experiment University Malaya Preservation of History Project. So Architect Mus, the screen is yours for 20 minutes.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Datin. First of all, I would like to express my dear gratitude to ARCHIDEX and also ICOMOS for allowing me to share on this platform some of my one of my projects, which is a relation to history and also conservation. But mine is actually on an adaptive reuse. So this is Panggung Experiment University Malaya, one of the premier university in Malaysia. So the Panggung experiment is actually very important to us because it's actually part of the Dewan Tunku Chancellor complex, which is actually situated right at a hill overlooking the lake, and the box marked red is actually the one that's sharing the same party wall as Dewan Tunku Chancellor in university. So we were given a task to actually look at to use this as a faculty for the culture and music, and also to do it as the performing arts, because in Kuala Lumpur at that time there were lots of big performing arts places, more than 500. So what we have here is actually a gem in Kuala Lumpur which can seat less than 500. So this is actually probably easier and much more palatable for corporates to have their shows here, and also to do their private screening of certain level, which is below 500 people. So from the existing structure, which was actually initially built by architect King Tenelu to his firm Booty Edwards and Partners, the building, the shell was built, but the internal part of the Panggung experiment was not fully explored. The whole 70 or 80 feet high or 24 meters high of the fly tower has not been fully used. It's an empty shell at the time when we were given the site. And the seating at that moment was actually an arena where seats are around it, so it's not a proper auditorium. So when we were given the task, we are to actually overhaul this whole building whilst keeping the shell of the building, to ensure that all the acoustics are taken care of, the heritage is taken care of, and the functional is to be enhanced and also taken care of. And also we have made this also user friendly for the disabled. So this is people with disability can also enjoy these shows in this auditorium, because both levels of the seating, the ground and the first floor, is accessible by wheelchairs. And also we have a royal box attached to it. So at the start of the project, it was actually done in 2 bids because the first contractor failed to complete the building. So we had a moment of 18 months to actually find a new contractor. So that's the reason why you see some of it are actually lag behind. So with that, it gives us time to actually look at how we can actually do this in a much more wholesome manner. So the whole thing now is the building that you cannot build a lot more higher than what it is now because the parapet is of a certain height. So we need to have a fully functioning auditorium. And if you look at the proper plan now, the depth of the stage and the depth of the seating is almost the same, which is actually compliance to the auditorium design. And if you look properly, if you look at this area here, this is actually where the Jalan Lingkaran of University Lingkong Budi. So normally the main entrance, the drop off at the old way, they straight away go inside the hall. But we found out there's a long place here, a vestibule that we can actually use. And the front at the back here is actually for the students and the lecturers, whereas this L shape here will be used for the people using this auditorium. So what we have done is the main area here becomes the box office area with the staircase that goes up to the royal box. So any VIPs or any formal function can happen here. This will be the place that is, they call it the pre-function before you go in the auditorium. So we make a right about turn so that there is a processional effect. Not just like where Sydney Opera House, you got the processional that you come in from the back in order for you to see the seats. Actually now as you come in, the grandeur is you come in and you see the stage right in front of your eyes rather than by the side of your eyes. So that's very, very important. So having said that, then we have to actually look at it in the sense that previously, if you look at this whole building, there is a circular thing here. That circular thing before was actually a circular stage that can go down and up. So if you have the Halloween movie or play, the something or apparition can come up from this using a circular thing. But we actually did not use that now. So when we took over for the project, we actually did the extra part here where there's a symphony box that is a sunken symphony orchestra box inside there. So you can actually have the thing. So if you can see here, there's an extension that the level, and there's also that stage can go up and down with hydraulics. And we also have got to comply with the new fire bylaws. For auditorium, we need to have sprinklers, we need to have all the rest of the things. Then the sprinklers is not just at the lower level for the auditorium, but in the ceiling space also, because one of the problems of this project is when they actually have the previous Pango experiment, what they have is every time it rains, you have to stop the show because the old roof where the mark blue is actually the roof. And you cannot even hear whatever the actor or the actress say, or even anyone on the stage. So as a result of that, we need to actually relook at the whole design of this auditorium to make it acoustically functional, so that any rain or shine, it plays and it can go on with how many shows, because we already centered and ensure that the acoustic thing is made the best. Because what is an auditorium without this acoustics being performed? So this is a section that shows, and the fly tower that I was saying, now we have made it in order to be fully functional. And also below here is the fire sprinkler tank for the firefighting equipment. And we have ensured that the view angle of the stage, wherever you are in the, you see at the picture on your right, that at what level there you can see the whole stage height of about 12 meters square wise and uninterrupted. So this is one of the most important things that we need to actually understand about auditorium, and how the first level and the control panel and the control room, which is beside the royal box. So when we were there, a lot of things have to actually be relooked at, and to ensure that this gargantuan majestic building is actually being taken care of. And we also took the trouble to ensure that the Tyrolean plaster outside it and some of the walls are also being retained. And if you look here, the amount of details that we need to do, so that from the ground floor we cannot see the top addition that we did for the officers of the music and of the Faculty of Arts there. So this actually, there's a view of the before and after photos. and we enhance the space inside. So when you go to the box office, there is actually a real box office where you can actually mingle, get your tickets before you actually be ushered to the next foyer, which is the pre-function. And the louvered RC, we also clean it up, ensure that it's being done. And while we are doing this, we maintain the old roof first. So so that we can work while it's actually rain or shine. Once we have actually ensured that all the RC work below is done, then we actually lift up for the roof, for the double roof that you see just now. And we also keep the ficus plant alive throughout the whole project and give it new life. And also the rainwater dump pipe that was missing, it used to be a copper, so we need to actually be painted with a different color also. But this was what was left before, and we took this over, and with the spirit of the team, we make sure that we finish this job so that it can be used for a function that Universiti Malaya have asked us to do. So this is coming in from the student and the faculty entrance from the where the student union is, and this is actually coming in from the rear side where we attach some of the fire thing, and also and then another entrance. And look at all the fins, these are, and the first part that we have to actually do before we do all this is in the archives of Universiti Malaya, the only tracings that we have are imperial, and still there, but some are actually wet. Because remember when they shifted the Jabatan Pembangunan to another office, so we managed to get it before they discard some of these spaces. So it's very, very crucial that when we do this sort of thing, we get the real drawings. And unfortunately, those drawings are actually in imperial, so 1/8 scale is not equal to 100. So we need to do some modification to dimension, and everything has got to follow whatever is actually on site, because we're working with existing building. And there are also some of the water planter boxes that we need to revive, and we need to also ensure that the termites doesn't eat the old buildings anymore. And these are actually what happened at the top and what was left from the previous contractor. So we actually took it and we actually did. So this is actually a two project thing, and the consultant remain the same, but the contractor is different. And I really salute the contractor because of the diligence and also the way that they did it so well. And Alhamdulillah is still standing there, and all the rusticated metal, steel, all being cleaned up to spec by the engineers. Okay, so these are some of the shots from the thing, and at that time there was no drone, so we have to physically go up at 80 feet or 85 feet. There was no staircase there, so we have actually to go up on the thing and see what was there. So imagine how we actually revived this whole building from this and to this. So this is actually the pre-function area that we're talking about, where food is served here, and you see the door on your far right. That is actually one of the door will be equal left and right to to go into the stage. So this is what it is from Jalan Lingkungan Budi, and we try to ensure that everything is actually looked at, though there's no how shall I say, new things, but somehow or other we have to actually ensure that the materials are kept to. This is actually of form concrete, which is actually polished, and the contractor did to clean it up every now and then, and we try to make the rhythm of the new columns for the floor above to be in congruence. So this is the one inside at the far left. And this is the seats that we try to do. And all these are in bomber compliance already. And what we did is actually we try to enhance the building. So this is one of the elements that we say that the sustenance of the history, but the gallons of the future. So this is one of the things that we try to do. And we have to do all these detailings, like a carpet layout, and to study how the ornaments that, and also we did use some of the wayang kulit manner to actually light up the lightings inside there. And this is how we can fit about 460 seats. And if you look at the seats above there, it's a glass railing that actually can, so that people from above can have an uninterrupted view of the stage, because normally people put concrete or low wall. So these are all acoustically calculated by the acoustician from my university in Auckland, because in Auckland University we have acoustician class, and also Professor Harold Marshall did some of the world's symphony orchestra building. So I learned from him, and he double confirmed all the, how should I say, the reverberation, the reflection through whatever material that we have done. And this is how, from my old alma mater, we work it together. So this is the new seat arrangement, and it's about 400 something, and is below that is the sprinkler tank and the water tank, and this is a stage that, and it's quite difficult for it to take a photo, but this is actually the photo towards the stage. And above it, on the high flight towers, you have the dance studio, you have the mixing studios, we have the classes for dance. Everything's there. On the right hand side is actually the lecture meeting rooms, because this building, if you look in the section before, later I'll show you the drawings, it's actually a double wall and or a different construction altogether. This is the waiting area for the royal box, and it's outside. So this is the approved drawings that we did. At that time was under the CF, so we still have got to use in manual. And this is the buildings, that the drawings that we have to do to ensure that, and a lot of to and fro with the bomber to ensure that this building complies, because this is the first time that a heritage building is to be shown and done with this use for auditorium. So the flight tower now is in full use. Now we have a staircase top and bottom here to go up all the way to the top of the flight tower and external to the outside, so that we can actually have an aerial view later. So these are the but I will not use this drawing. I use this drawing so we can see how the rate is actually in new works. And you can see that the basement here, we have all the changing room properly, and there's a ramp that can bring the props up and down. And there is this attachment there. This is where the sunken symphony orchestra that can go up. Later, you can see the picture of the hydraulics, and this is where the seating area. And this is actually the plan where, if you see on top here, these are all the lecturer classrooms, the professors' rooms, the students' rooms, and also two lifts. One lift here, and there's two staircases. This is actually where the faculty comes in. This at the bottom is actually for the public. So we separate those entrances, and all these staircases now add on for the bomber compliance, so that you can go all the way up. And this gray thing is actually all the new catwalk that you need to do. So within the shell, a lot of things have to be done, and a lot of major things have got to be used. Somehow or other, we actually use about 1,500 drawings, sheets of drawings, to actually document this whole building. Because if you look properly here, this shell here is different from the shell of the auditorium. So we got the auditorium have got not just a double wall, there's a hollow wall. So you cannot listen whatever the teachers or the people up in the office, because of the double 9-inch wall there. So the framing of this is, and one of the problems that we have is, when you have an existing building, how do you do for the top floor with new structures? So our engineers have got to use their creativity. They use they call it the extended arms at the lower basement floor. So the column is actually sitting where the pile cap is not sitting where the column is. So the pile cap is somewhere else, and the column is sitting on the beam, and it has to be transferred all around. So wherever we find empty space, then we put all the structures. So these are actually the wall panels that we do. The roof, and this is some of the details that we do for the toilets, and also some of the important roofs. I'm not showing you the details of the A3 size. This so far is only the A1 size, but a lot of work have actually gone in order to ensure that all these particular details are actually been done in order to have all this to happen. And this has been used for quite some time, but until now, because of the PKP, you cannot use. So the handicap can access from the ground and also from the first floor. So we can see how the acoustic, the light bar, and the seating arrangement, so you can have easy access in and out. And you have this the numbering, and air conditioning also is coming on from the underfloor. So this is all the timber paneling that we have done. the stage, you can see there all the light bars. There were many light bars that we need to do, and you can see here on the right hand side bottom is actually the elevator the stage can go up and down. And we use the wayang kulit style of the lantern, so you can show it at night and also before and after or during the intermission of the show. And some of these places, the timber, we also test for its durability when people jump or do a very high impact performance. So this is actually the door, the main door to the Royal, how the anyaman is also being used there, and also the main staircase from the ground floor. And you can see here the offices and also the lecture room. And on your right, you can see the top and right bottom is how much steel and how much structure struts to actually hold all the ceiling, the lower ceiling for the auditorium, and also the two roofs that we were saying, in order to have all these things happen, the air conditioning, so that the noise from above here doesn't goes down. And we have what I call a light searchlight that goes under this, that people can do like a Hollywood style shooting to the stage. So this is some of the timber that we do, some of the inside picture. See on the left hand side, this is the hydraulic stage I was talking about. So to do this, we have to do a certain thing. So the programming of the project management, how to actually bring this whole thing from outside to inside when the shell is that big and the door is only that big, because the structure is opening is only that much. So we need to tackle all this. And during this period, there are a lot of failure of ceilings. So we ensure, and the engineers have made sure that all the loadings, and he even stand on that ceiling, and so far alhamdulillah doesn't drop it. This is actually the rows of the fly tower to whatever Dato' Hinton Lu was envisioning, that fly tower. So I made it happen now. So all the scenery that goes up and down is happening, and we get all the catwalks are happening at every of the fly tower, because normally the catwalk doesn't go across. But I made sure the catwalk goes across, so that if you have any problems, you can actually manage the scenery at every. I bought 7 or 8 sceneries here, so you can go up and down easily. And this is actually the catwalk that I say from one end of the fly tower to go to the other side. So it's properly done, properly lighted, and ensure that our very heritage of University Malaya building, the Panggung Experiment TTC, is actually being taken care of, and it can be used inshallah for the next 100 years. And the performance and also the acoustic is up to the level of international standard. And so this is the cluster that I was talking about. And mind you, behind that wall, on the brown wall, there was an incident in 2001 where there was a fire in DTC due to some what they call unwanted scenes. But luckily the fire didn't get into the Panggung Experiment, because that fire door, this fire door is a 4-hour fire door, and we can only see smoke comes out. So there was what they call suit of black in color, but we cleared it up and we sealed it all together. So this building is now separated, because before this you can actually walk from the Dewan Tunku Chancellor stage to the Panggung Experiment stage, because there's a door there. But I think Bomber doesn't allow it now, because this now is staged as 2 different buildings. But anyhow, the safety and welfare of the people using this are taken care of, inshallah. And all this actually to the new latest, so at that time for the show. And this is actually where the dance studio, the acoustic for recording. So it can be made into a money making for University Malaya, so that they can actually use the studio. And the project box there, you can actually see show what's next, what's after, or the future coming events. So this is how we are looking at. And Ficus is still there. And the latest photo that we took there, this is how the stage looking upwards, so you can have the mesh of the screens of walking the catwalk for all your lighting to be repaired, and it is actually durable. And also we make sure that things are in order. So I think with that I conclude my presentation, but I just would like to say that I'm quite happy working on this building, because this building is really a building that when I wanted to study architecture, I was actually very interested at how a large mass of concrete can be like that for that height and for that long. And until now, if we're looking at in 1969 or 66, if I'm not mistaken, when the building was actually completed, now it's already 2021 and the structure is still there. And the moment when we touched the building to do the substructure, there was a lot of sensors to look at whether there was any settlement. Alhamdulillah, no. So that means to say it is actually built to last. And Alhamdulillah, we are happy to be part of this continuation of the history. And I think that's probably the reason of this topic called the sustenance of the previous to go to the future. Mustafa, none speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Architect Mustafa, for a delightful journey into a rich and eventful structure hidden right within our everyday life in campus. So you were saying that you were doing the work right, well, outside you can't really see what's happening inside. Anyway, before we discuss, let's bring Architect Najib in for the discourse. Assalamualaikum again, Najib. Right.
Waalaikumsalam.
So just imagine the two of you put together. Just so much information to digest and inside about the past and the present, or the Merdeka period, which is where the thesis comes about. Okay. I'm sure participants had a lot to ask, so let's open for questions. I can see here good questions now. Maybe I start from here. Question from Lillian. Okay. So there's a questions to both of you. Okay. So what is the common challenge that you both face when trying to connect traditional heritage with modern architecture? Perhaps maybe Naz can answer first. Yeah.
Very simply put, one of the problems that at least I face is simply that people don't know the heritage. And I'm not saying that I know everything. There's a lot of things that I don't know, but I try. I attend lectures. I go to sites. I think I've been to just about every major heritage site in Malaysia, including in Sabah, Sarawak. And because one of the first, I was very lucky because one of the first projects that I got when I started working in Architect Kitas Sendirian in KL way back in 1991 was a project for the designs of traditional Malay houses from each state in Malaysia, including Sabah and Sarawak, for Bank Pertanian Malaysia, because they had a retreat that they were building, and it still exists today. It's a private retreat, so unfortunately people can't visit, but it's there. And we went to I and my team, we went to every state in Malaysia. We visited museums, we talked to the orang kampung, So back to answering the question, the problem that we face is that there is so much lack of awareness, lack of knowledge on our architectural heritage, in fact, on our overall history. And that's the thing about many Malaysians. We don't care about history. We don't read. We don't, I give you a very quick example. When I took a group of Malaysians on, or participated in a tour to Egypt, to Egypt. Now, everybody was excited to go and see the pyramids. Fine, okay. So the Arab tour guide on the bus, berbuih mulut dia cerita pasal the history of the pyramids, who built them, what are the theories behind it and everything. And our Malaysian people, I think I was the only one listening, because nobody else cared about the history. They just wanted to go there, see the nice pyramids, take the photos for the Facebook and Instagram, and that's it. And when you go back to the hotel, you said, do you remember what the guide said when the pyramids were built? Entahlah, ya tak ingat. Dia cakap ya, this is very sad. And the thing was that Arab guide was lamenting to me because it was a lady. She noticed that I was the only one listening. She says, "Don't you Malaysians want to know about history? This is like 5,000 years old, and people don't care. They just want to know, where did you buy that tudung? Where did you get that Arabic perfume? This is so sad." So it's the same thing within Malaysia. People don't care. If if you ask them when was Istana Sri Menanti built, nobody knows. What style is it? Nobody knows. Do they care? Is it Mughal or Moorish or Indo-Saracenic or whatever? Nobody knows. Nobody cares, except of course some architects, especially those who are here. And congratulations to all of you who are here, because you care, you want to know, you want to listen. So thank you very much for attending. The seeds begin with you guys. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Both same questions. What is the common challenge that you face to try to connect traditional heritage with modern architecture? Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have done it. Yeah, you have done. Well, it's not much of heritage, traditional, but it is modernist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, frankly speaking, all buildings now that was done in 1960s now are actually considered to be
The
a heritage
heritage.
building because it's beyond
Yes.
50 years already. So
Yes, very true.
when we were doing that building, I was thinking when we complete that building, it's already a heritage valued building. So how do I want to make it much more valuable than what the shell is? Because the money that you spent, the money that university spent, okay, has to be got to be given value. So my problem is I need to understand what was Dato Kington's idea of doing that.
Okay.
What
The
was his
philosophy.
motions?
Yeah.
What was his impression when he did the
Mm.
DTC and Pango experiment? Because normally, right? Normally, in all universities in the world I've seen, I checked through the website at that time. None has got a theater annexed to a big hall of the university. The big hall is the big hall. The theater is the theater. But I need to understand why he put that a
Together.
theater
Yeah.
and also this big hall.
Mm.
When I looked through, he was trying to say that no matter how high you learn, no matter how high your academic is, you still need to have your culture beside you to bring this together. And that's the reason why I have to ensure whatever the shell, at least the shell, and whatever is inside, it has to be enriched. So that was the challenge, to understand what was his thinking, what was his notion, what was his first pencil sketch, and why at that moment of time also the Merdeka time that the Tunku could agree to have a cultural theater next to a big university hall. You look at University Pertanian, you look at other universities, they don't have that next together. That's probably my answer.
Right. It's very, very good. Insight also, because you have to really dig to the history about it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we go to the next questions here from Kaizen. How do you strike a balance between sense of authenticity, which is working class culture, and adaptability to contemporary needs or placemaking when it comes to industrial heritage rehabilitation? What are the good examples? It doesn't say anyone, so perhaps maybe back to maybe now this time Moose answer first, and then Matt.
I,
Yeah,
I I think the building
yeah,
that I'm working on really is a working class building, because you are dealing with concrete,
yeah.
you are dealing with metal, you're dealing with
Heritage
glass,
rehab.
you're
Yeah,
dealing with aluminium, you're dealing with how shall I say bricks. So when we were doing that, I and my team did not just look at the drawings. What we did was we go to the site there, ask the custodian
community.
of the university Panggung experiment, please open all doors unbarred. That means to say that I cannot wait for them to open the door whenever there's a door locked. Just let it open for us to walk, flow through, free through, so that we can sit in the space. We can sit on the top or the bottom or whatever level that there is, and to see why that particular building is like that. Basically, if I were to use the word, is we need to romance with the building.
Spiritual.
We need to
Yeah,
make love
spiritual.
with the
Yeah.
building. We need to touch the sense. We need to go and take the pencil and strike from the top, bottom, or sideways in order to feel the material, why that material was chosen. So and we need to also then understand at that moment when we were doing the refurbishment or adaptive reuse, what are the materials that's available, which is in abundance. so that we don't have shortage of materials when we want to do the refurbishment. And that's very, very crucial. And we need to do a lot of test and try, on site and off site to mimic whatever it was before. One of the most difficult part is not the tiling plaster. The most difficult part is how to get the concrete to be as seasoned as that. That's the most difficult part, and that's one of the trying times, and we need to talk to a lot of concrete people to actually
Suppliers, yeah.
how to do that. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Natch, you can add something to it? Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is a bit tricky when you talk about sense of authenticity because it comes in many grades or many levels, and you need to know, and it differs with different buildings. So that's a difficulty. There's no cookie cutter solution, to each and every building that you're working on when it comes to heritage and authenticity in conservation, in renovation. Okay, but I think a rough, safe advice is if you want to maintain that authenticity and that sense of heritage, okay, then try to maintain everything as authentic as possible, meaning if you have to do some sort of renovation, some sort of refurbishment, some sort of conservation work, then the basic tenet is keep everything as original as possible, as original as you possibly can, and only change if it affects just two things, health and or safety. Okay? If it doesn't affect health and or safety of users, then there's no reason not to keep that authenticity, to try and keep the same materials, the same type of construction technology, and all that. And if it affects health and safety, but you can find a way to overcome it by thinking out of the box, then try and do that. For example, okay, let's say you're given a project where you have to, it's an old abandoned building, it hasn't been, but it's still standing, okay, and there are a lot of authentic things in there. It's very old, but then when you come in and you start looking at the design requirements and everything, you find that the staircase inside doesn't comply with current building codes, okay, or fire codes. Okay, now, of course, in the recent past, everybody would say, "Oh, you have to change the staircase. You have to, you have to just abandon the whole staircase." Well, try to think out of the box, like many other countries do, where they try to maintain that old staircase, no matter how rickety, no matter how bad it is, but instead have another set of staircase or staircases within easy reach outside. Okay, so yes, you will disturb the some parts, and you try to minimize it, some parts of the external, okay, but try to minimize it. And when you do, keep it authentic in the sense that, yes, everybody will know this is a requirement because of bomba, because of health, because of safety, but you try to maintain that internal. I mean, interior designers will love this because they understand. I work with interior designers, and they also understand. They want to keep that authenticity. So that's, at least that's the tenet, okay? Try to keep everything as authentic as possible, even when you're building a new building, but change it only when it affects human health and human safety. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, we have another question from Kaizin, but I'll read Rachel Lim's first. Okay, Rachel Lim says, questions for both speakers again. The common argument when it comes to restoring or adaptive reuse old or heritage building is expensive costs compared to newly built, therefore not worth it. So, in your opinion, is it true? If this is the biggest challenge, what can be done to overcome this challenge? All right, back to maybe now Nutch first, and then Mustafa. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Now, again, there's no one cookie cutter solution for everything, and it depends on the type of building. And yes, for the most part, it is more expensive to restore, to conserve old buildings for various reasons. Sometimes it's because the materials can't, those authentic materials can't be found anymore, and or maybe you can, but it's very expensive. Now, it all depends on values. It all boils down to values. Do we value that old heritage or not? If we don't value it, then there's no argument. That's it. No need. I don't need to say anything anymore. Betul tak? Okay, but if we
Yeah.
value it, okay, if we
Yeah.
value
We
that, we
go all
know,
out. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, we will go all out to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's I think that's the only answer. It's the value
Perfect.
system that we all subscribe to. And
Yeah.
yes, we have seen examples where even the owners don't care. They just
Right.
demolish the whole thing that their grandfather built, and they want to build
Yeah.
something new in its place. So what can you do? You can't. It's this is a democratic
You can.
country. You own property democratically. It's yours. People can't disturb it, and so that's it. But for public buildings, I think it's worth
Yeah.
arguing that we need to spend a little bit more and go for proper conservation. Okay, now the second part of it is very simple. To keep the costs as low as possible, you start by engaging the most expensive as possible. Okay, and I'm
Capital
not
cost.
I'm not promoting myself. Okay, what I mean is get the best
Conservative.
conservators. Okay, now I
Yes.
am not promoting myself because I am not a conservator. You cannot engage me. Okay, so and in a way, I when I was asked, hey Naj, why don't you register yourself as a conservator? I said no, because if I do that, then I would be able to advocate for using conservators, because then I'd be advocating myself. So remember,
Mm.
I'm not a registered conservator. Okay, I'm a researcher. I do research. Okay, but I would suggest that to keep your costs low, get good conservators. Okay, because conservators, my friends, I know most of them. Okay, so I can't say they are fellow conservators because I'm not. Okay, you can't engage me for that. But I know they are very, very dedicated people who want to make sure that you get the best value for your building, the best value for your money. And so that's one of the first things to do. Get a good conservator for the type of building that you want to conserve. They will help you to conserve money as well. Okay, that's my answer.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Most quickly. Yeah. Because we have
Okay.
another one question to go. Yeah. Yeah.
My answer will be like this. Even though it's a public building or even a private building, right? What I find and most crucial that people need to also address is you already save on the structural building time. So with that structural building time, you basically you forget about the building plans. You probably only now need to actually submit for a certain change of
Mm.
use or upgrading. And because when we did for the Panggung experiment, what we did was pengubah suaian. There's no, even though there's a top and something
Okay.
new, but the something new is only a minuscule compared to the bigger picture. So you save that. And one of the most important thing that we need to understand as architects when we promote this sort of things, it is under the new urban agenda 2016 for the Habitat 3 going forward to 20 years into 2036, the resilience of cultures is actually one of the promises that Malaysia and also 100 other countries signed up in that new urban agenda,
Exactly.
which is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that benefit is this: which is better? You have a new building and people ask your design principle, your concept, and to tell us the story of the building only stops from that where the building starts with the design, compared with a design where you start when the building was built 100 years ago or 50 years ago, there was a storyline, you continue and you make it into a
Better.
better use for that moment of time, and also to appreciate the moment of time that the parties or your client want it to be adding value. One, economic value. Two, cultural value. Three, social value. Four, the nation's value. Five, even the world heritage value. So these values cannot be monetized, but it can be labeled in the sense that, like what I call Najib was trying to say, the only timber, higher structure timber, how shall I say, palace. Here we have in the university, the only building where the grand hall is attached with a cultural element, and nowhere in the world like that. And it's actually there, we protect it and we actually make it happen. So I think that is actually a better way to have. And I think now a lot of buildings, a lot of architectural projects are working on storyline. And that storyline is the one that holds on. So whenever there's a tour guide, whenever there's a tour that goes in, not just for architecture tour, but even for tourist tour, the storyline is important. People want to listen to the story. When was it? How was it? What was it? Why it was built? Where it was built? Who was it for? That is very, very important. And I think if you can appreciate that, if you can, in fact, when we were discussing with University Malaya, at that time when this project was on, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, 3 different TNCs changed. So you can just imagine having a country, 3 different prime ministers change, and that project needs to go on. For TNC, there's certain TNC going to technology, TNC going to culture, the TNC going into what I call humanities or into something else. So we don't know. So we need to gauge, and these are the things that's very, very crucial. And Alhamdulillah, the project team in UC Malaya worked with us together very smartly, and we managed to do this together. And this building, oh my goodness, of course, there is also one moment of time when I was going inside the building. Then you can go to cerita hantu pun ada juga lah. Tapi but that was another story. But what to say is that is you cannot live without the story, because just imagine that building is there for the past 1960, 58, 59 years old. So as old as whoever, even who are most of the architecture practitioners. Okay. So those are my comments. And so simply said, it's more value to actually put your money into an adaptive reuse rather than building a new one, because you have a storyline to carry on.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have the last question here, very general, rather, from Kaizin. So apart from government, in terms of rehabilitation, where can we obtain funds to support heritage rehabilitation in Malaysia? All right. So maybe Musnad today. Yeah. That's the last question.
Okay. Actually, under the new budget, right, there is some money that's actually there for heritage, but it's not enough compared to Singapore, right? If you actually spend $1 to heritage, there is $1 from the government that supports you. So imagine, and you also get 300 times percentage of tax rebate, 300 times, which is 3 times what you invested. So first is the government. The money can come from the government in the sense that through their budgetary allocation of the importance of natural heritage. Number 2, if you go to companies that would like to go for the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance. So these companies, if we were to employ them, and if we were to inform them of this particular building, and the ESG is very crucial for them, because it's not just for local. The world now, when you're having 2050 carbon neutral, you're having 2030, you're having a lot of all the Standard and Poor's, all the they call it the people that judge you as a company, right? It gives them a lot more credibility. It gives them more points. It gives them more assertion. It gives them more bargaining power that they are a company or a group that is actually for heritage or conservation or even adaptive reuse, or to enrich the current cultural fabric that is already there to be of the current use or the future of the country or the state, or even the region for that matter, even now in Southeast Asia. And that's my answer.
Thank you. Okay, now the last 2 questions for both of you. Prerogative of the moderator to ask. Okay, Architect Natch. Okay, Natch, what do you think of the theme park or hotels that mimics heritage just to sell? So,
Okay. That's a very in a way a funny and sad question at the same time. Okay, now theme parks are another genre by themselves. Okay, theme parks are meant for fun. They're not meant for authenticity, actually. Okay, now it's like making some kind of Hollywood movie. Okay, even Hollywood movies that say that they are based on a true story, based on historic events, are possible, but there's always that factor which all artistic people know, that is artistic license. Okay, and that applies in architecture as well. Okay, so even the best of these Hollywood movies that supposedly depend or supposedly are based on some kind of history, there's always that reinterpretation here and there, and the artistic license of the director, blah blah blah. So it's the same with theme parks. The intention of the theme park is not to portray authenticity. It's to get you to have fun, to
Happy
part with your
fun.
money, to part with your money and have fun. So they will do whatever they like. Okay, it's not. Of course, some good ones will try to incorporate the best. And if I am engaged as a consultant for that, I will try my best. But at the same time, I know, you sometimes you just can't do everything so authentic in the context of a theme park. Okay. Having said that, the danger is when you have proper projects, building projects, which become like theme parks. Okay, and that's the
That's the
danger.
danger.
Okay, if it is a theme park, fine. But if it's a project that's not a theme park, it tries to portray itself as based on good heritage apa semua, but then it ends up looking like a theme park. That's where you really want to bring the wrecking ball and say, hey, let's do it all again lah. And apa tu? But I.
You say
Macam
about
I wanted,
about
I wanted to give an
just a
example,
reference.
but this is too public. I don't want to. I don't want to nanti buat orang marah pula, so I better not mention. Better not.
All right, thank you, Nat. Sure, yeah, it gives a better of a background that you can't really refer or make reference of anything but as something that is authentic. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now maybe now to Architect Mustafa, your expert is in resiliency. Now, how
Yes.
we recommend as a requirement in the refurbishment or preservation of heritage building against various calamities? You could take your example of your current project or any future projects on heritage. Yeah.
Okay. Especially now with the pandemic, right? The test of resilience is in a much more bigger levels, not just talking about the physical building. We now need to look at the resilience of what is the importance of that particular building in that culture or group of people. Every building now, especially that Panggul experiment we did, has got a genius loci attached to it. You cannot bring that to any other places. So the resilience is how do we create or recreate the essence of that space before into what is actually now. And I think the best part is you have to understand the weather of the space, because that building is in Universiti Malaya, even though it's in Kuala Lumpur. So you need to understand the weather of Universiti Malaya also, because it's actually on top of a hill. And then we need to understand the place of work of that people that using the building. Previously that building is just a building, but now it's now a centroid, because there are actually cultural classes there. There are actually places for people to practice there, which is actually supposed to be that way in university, right? It's supposed to be people's place. So the resilience is how much do you use that building over a period of time by the how many people that's been used. If you can actually ensure that whatever you build, whatever you refurbish, whatever you actually heritage it, people must use that building to the level that it has to be. So that's why you can akin to this. I would love to see that building is actually open to students to do their practice, to do the dance, to do the sound testing, so that the building is not just lively because of its architectural heritage, but it's lively with activities. I think buildings with activities is a no-go now. It can be in the 1940s, 1930s, stand there, wait for it to be used. Now, no, a building has to be used, of course, like 24/7, 365. Of course, not for mama sharing space, lah, but to its good use for, say, for university is what. So if it's to be used again, like for instance, Panggul experiment, because I already separated the public entrance against the private entrance, which for universities, they can come from the student union without having to disturb the main, if they call it the protocol entrance. The protocol entrance is not disturbed. there is actually a side entrance for the teachers, and they have their own passageway to actually go, and they can use the auditorium there. So this is where I say that the resilience is how you can assure and ensure the building is used for the most of the year. We don't have winter, right? So the building should be able to be used by everybody,
All
anybody.
year round, yeah,
Open,
all
it
year
should be
round.
open to anybody around the area. Okay, for instance, say a company wants to
Yeah.
do a thing that to launch a product art exhibition, they can do in that place. So it's how you use the thing.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for all the questions. But apologize we're not able to do justice in taking questions even within this short time span. So before we end the session, can you both sums up the direction? Say what should be our industry lead to embrace heritage as not only as an asset to the development of the country. So maybe Najib, like any last words of advice?
Very simple. My last words of advice are: please read, learn, attend lectures like this, watch documentaries, and visit the sites. Of course, now we can't do that
Yeah.
now, but if you can, go to Sri Menanti, go to all our heritage sites, go to Sungai Batu in Kedah, which is currently the oldest architectural remains in Southeast Asia. Fantastic. It's right here in Malaysia. Sungai Batu, those bricks there have been dated back to 788 BC. That's before the Greek, before the Roman Empire. We have that.
Right in the
We
doorstep
have that now
anyway.
right here in Malaysia. I have brought foreign tourists there, and I want to see more Malaysians. There. I have. We really need to get. Malaysians to
Excited about it.
understand that there's so much value in history. I give you one example, okay? As you mentioned, I speak 7 languages, and one of the languages that I speak is Italian. When I was in Italy, okay, our group, we went to visit a beautiful little village, Alberobello, in southern Italy, okay? And when we arrived there, this was way back the 1990s, and there was no internet, no nothing, so we heard about it, we went there. And so when we arrived in Alberobello, this lovely village, you can Google it, Albero Bello. It's one of the most beautiful traditional villages in all Europe, always in the top 5. So when we arrived there in the 1990s, we didn't have a guide. It was a bit impromptu. So we went to the nearest grocery store, and since I was the one who spoke Italian, so I asked the grocer there, can you recommend anyone nearby who can guide us? And he said, okay, you go down to the house at the end, and then knock on the door, and somebody there will be able to guide you. So we went down to the house, and I remember this like as if it was yesterday. We knocked on the door, and a lady answered, and we asked, as I said, I speak Italian, so I asked if the greengrocer said that there's somebody here who can guide us around this lovely village, and said, oh, yes, okay. And you know who she called? She called her 11-year-old son. 11-year-old boy came out, and he happily guided us around his village. He was able to tell us the structure of the house. He was able to bring us to the little village chapel and went, era costruito in 1993. Like this little boy knew that his church was built in such and such a year. Okay. I remember very well. It was built in 1893. This 11-year-old boy. I'm so embarrassed. I don't even think my son knows when our local masjid was built. I must make it a point for them to know, because they should not lose out to this lovely little boy in Alberobello. Now that's where we can say that they have a developed society. See, a society that values knowledge, that values heritage. Okay, that's why they have. That's why we are not a developed nation. We are not a developed people, so we are not a developed nation. Okay, so we need to get to that level where, for example, in the United States, where I studied in New York, we visited one high school, and lo and behold, they had a subject called architecture. Students study a subject called architecture. And here, if you want to introduce something more, people will say, oh, our kids are already filled with, their heads already filled. You can't fill in anymore. Kesian diorang. The human intellect is limitless. You can fit in. If I can speak 7 languages, all of you can speak more. Okay, because
That's a
the human
challenge.
head
Yep.
is limitless. This is not the limit of our butung. Buah butung I mentioned. This is not the limit. The limit is all the bits and bytes inside there, which is limitless. So
Okay,
that's
thank
my
you,
answer.
Nash.
Sorry, it
Yeah,
was
thank
more
you,
than just
Nash.
a few words.
Oh, well, yeah, it is. So, Boost, now make it shorter because we don't have much time.
Sorry, boss.
Okay. You
All
you
right,
you
yeah.
you 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 took half of my answer, so don't worry. I just go to the other half. Um,
All right, yeah.
my long and short answer is this: architects now doesn't go by one word. Architect, no. There is heritage architect, there is conservation architect, there is reporting architect, there's a photographer architect, there is also a researcher architect. So we need all these people to actually look at the building that we want to do or a space that we want to do, and meaning we need to be specialized. Okay, we need to be specialized in order for us to be better, because the infrastructure has been built. Now it's actually to carry on the legacy and to ensure that it's actually worthwhile, and also to make it more architecturally adventurous. And apart from that, when if I were to relate it to resilience, is the moment that you have a storyline, that resilience stays on, and that can go on until and beyond. So you will get this building to be there probably in the year 2069 or 2070, in that 1000 years later, for people to actually appreciate this building, which is very, very crucial and very, very important. And how, why it was designed that way. So that's the reason why also I did say that we need to understand the principles of why it was designed that way. And the genius loci of the space is very, very crucial. And I think betul what Nat said, you need to read a
Read
lot of
and
things. Read what the writings of the architect that designed it. Read the writings of the commentaries that comes together with that, if there are commentaries. And then read also the people who actually work on that particular
use
building.
it.
Yes, and also who maintains it. Then you can have a lot of story. So when we were doing that University Malaya Panggung experiment, I didn't ask for the director of the building to come with me. I would like to ask the caretaker.
Janitor.
He go around with us, because that's where I know a lot of the doors, a lot of windows, the story, the
The ghost
who,
stories as well.
yeah, whoever came to the building, whoever came to the building, whether it's dignitaries or normal people, and
Eh,
where are the pitfalls of the design, so that he knows. Sometimes they
yeah.
say, Pak, ni susah nak cuci ni, kena kalau buat cara lain tak, something like that. So dia ada one yang akan bagi tahu kita. So
Tells you
we need to actually go to that level to actually
level.
understand building. Itu je lah kot. I rasa
Alright.
for now it's actually more onto that lah. And we got lots of those building. And I tell you one thing, with this pandemic now, I think we have the whole chest in KL to actually unearth for this adaptive reuse.
Alright, yeah.
Some
So
hotels are closed down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, Architect Najib, Architect Mustafa, for this wonderful and inspiring presentation today. Indeed, we have learned so much in this short space of time. And of course, we would like to have more, but time is again a concern. So while we savor the anecdotes, the pragmatic of design, and the romance of the mature built environment, stay tuned for upcoming Architects with ICOMOS again soon. So again, thank you to the two lively speakers, Najib Arifin and Architect Mustafa Kamal Zulkarnain. So Nuina here to sign off. Thank you. Wishing you Merdeka and
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Terima
Thank
kasih
you. All
semua.
right.
Merdeka 64
All right.
tahun.
Yep.
Yes.
Here, my pledge. Thank you.